Hi, this video is a walkthrough of the first practice test. Each test will have the real test and the practice test. The practice test is not mandatory, but I strongly recommend it to at least give you a sense of how the test is going to go. The practice test does not count toward your final grade. It will appear in the grade book, but it doesn't actually get computed when the final grade is being added up. When you submit the practice test, you will be able to see answers to the questions that can be automatically graded. Questions that require me to grade them manually will not be graded unless you specifically ask me to. So let's just go ahead and take a look at this. So this practice test, I should say, is completely identical to the real test in that it is pulling the same number of questions from the same question pools. So the tests are randomized. They have 10 questions, and each question is pulled from a pool which has a range of other possible. The pools are all of different sizes, but they're all large enough that the odds that you get the same question twice are pretty slim. In this case, the practice test is set up identically to the real test. In some other cases, there are practical limitations on the Canvas software that keep me from doing the practice test this way. But still, this should give you a sense of what's going on. All right, so what I'm going to do to start with is just scroll through the questions and show you how the test is structured. The first 3 questions are multiple choice or short answer or multiple select, matching, that sort of thing. And they're all about important terms that are used in the book, right? And all of those terms are on the review sheet that I gave you in class 1. Right? So that's the first 3 questions. After that, you've got questions 4 and 5 are standard form questions. So this is like the first set of homework problems where you are asked to put an argument in standard form, write the conclusion, write the indicator word separately, etc. Questions 6 through 8 are like that, except in addition to having passages that are arguments, there are also passages that are non-arguments and passages that are explanations. So you need to first identify whether the passage is an argument, an explanation, or neither. And then if it's one of the first 2, put it in standard form. And if it's neither, then you just explain why you don't think it's an argument in standard form, or an argument or an explanation. And then 9 and 10 have arguments that you need to put in standard form, but you also need to identify them as inductive or deductive, and then use the appropriate terms to evaluate them. So if they're deductive, say whether they are valid or invalid, and if they are inductive, say whether they are strong or weak. All right. So let's just run through these. Which of the following is the best definition of metacognition, as the term is used in logic and critical thinking? So oftentimes some of these questions will, rather than just saying as the term is used in critical thinking, it says as the term is used in logic and critical thinking, because the question is used actually in both of my classes, both my class on logic and my class on critical thinking. But in any case, metacognition, you should remember that from the first video. I defined it as thinking about thinking. So let's see what we got here. Yes, thought processes that are applied to other thought processes. That fits what I was remembering. It's also good to always read all of the distractors to be sure you know what's going on. This is just test-taking advice. Thought processes that are scattered, disconnected, or confused. No, that's not right. Thought processes that follow the basic rules of logic. No. Thought processes that are especially powerful or effective. No. Okay, the other thing to remember is that this test is open book and open note. And that is because I find the surveillance software that they use to keep you from looking at your notes to be particularly, to be an invasion of privacy. So if you had that review sheet, you may have wanted to take notes on it, you could have that in front of you and you could just look up these words. That's fine. I believe the process of taking good notes, having them organized in a way that you can refer back to well, is in itself educational. All right. Cognitive bias. How is the term used in this course? 1. An argument that appears to be good in some way, valid, sound, strong, or cogent, but really is not. No, that is not the correct answer. That is the definition of a fallacy. A prejudice against someone because they belong to a stigmatized group or for other reasons that are beyond the individual's control. No, that's not the correct answer either, although identity biases, racial biases, gender biases are a kind of cognitive bias. Cognitive bias goes well beyond that, and some of them are completely non-political. And as I've said before, the mother of all cognitive biases, I just want to repeat this because it's worth emphasizing, is confirmation bias. Your tendency to seek out information that fits the views you already hold. All right. The part of a meaning of a term that conveys information, that's a completely nonsensical distractor. The definition of cognitive bias is this one: a habit of reasoning that can become dysfunctional under certain circumstances. Often these biases are not a matter of explicit belief. So that's part of the important difference between the philosophical and the psychological methods of understanding critical thinking. The philosophical method focuses on explicitly held beliefs and verbal arguments, and the psychological method focuses on cognitive biases, which can be unconscious and unspoken. An argument is valid on which of the following conditions? An argument is valid when it is impossible for the conclusion to be false when the premises are true. So it's this one. All right, so now we've got arguments in standard form. And remember, the italics are the context. So this is first one, from an academic article by Iris Marianne Young comparing the liability and political models of responsibility. The problems we face are large-scale structural problems, often global in scale. Therefore, we need an additional model of autonomy because the liability model only works on a small scale. All right, check out those indicator words. You've got two of them here, therefore and because. We'll put that down right away. Indicators, therefore, because. And then that lets us know, actually, that the conclusion's here in the middle, sandwiched between them. Yeah, we'll put that one in first because it's always good to work backwards from the conclusion when you are analyzing an argument. So we're going to go here, conclusion. We need an additional model of responsibility. And we'll put some underscores here for the line. And then P1, the problems we face are large scale. Even global. We don't need to add even global. We'll just set that aside. P2, the liability model only works on a small scale. Okay, now at this point you might be a little thrown off because you're like, I'm not in this class that's reading this essay. I don't know what any of these things are. But you don't really have to know the details. You can just see use the indicator words and a little bit of understanding of ordinary English to see how the argument is structured. You've got a thing that it only works on small scales. We've got large scale problems, so we need another kind of thing. All right. Next up, from a paper in a bioethics class, doctors should not have to ask permission to sell tissues they remove from your body. We all benefit from advances science makes through research on these tissues, and the burden of keeping track of where every tissue sample comes from would be too great. All right, actually, I don't see any indicator words here, but it sure as heck looks like the first sentence is a conclusion, and the next two sentences are evidence for that conclusion, that doctors shouldn't have to ask permission to do something. And by the way, this is something that's true, right? If doctors remove your spleen because it has cancer, they are totally allowed to then sell it. Well, neither here nor there. Well, it's for my bioethics class. You should take it. It's a fun class. No indicator words. Conclusion. Doctors do not need to get should not. It's a normative conclusion. See, it's got that should in there. Should not need to get permission to sell tissues. P1. We all benefit from science. P2, keeping track of the sources of tissue samples would be too great a burden. All right. Oh, and we need a line here. Bloop. Okay. Let's pause. Okay, so the next three questions could be arguments, but they could also be explanations or neither. Let's take a look at number 6. Why do birds sing in the morning? Birds can sing any time of day, but at dawn their songs are even louder, livelier, and more frequent. But why choose the hours around sunrise to sing? There are a number of theories, and they're not mutually exclusive. One idea is that early in the morning, light levels are too dim to do foraging, so it's a great opportunity to sing instead. All right, so this one might be a little tricky because, as I've emphasized before, the difference between an argument and an explanation is that an explanation is about something the audience already believes. And you might look at this and think, well, do birds sing more earlier in the morning? Yes, they do. And the way this is all worded, it looks like it's aimed at someone who already knows this fact, that birds tend to be louder in the morning. You may have actually just noticed that because they wake you up. But even if you didn't know that, you could see that this is answering a question, why do birds sing in the morning? And that question is posed by someone who already believes that birds sing in the morning. So it's an explanation. The person asking the question already believes that birds sing more in the morning. So what do we have here? P1. We don't want to do P's because it's all explanation. So 1, light levels are too low in the morning to forage. 2, you can still sing. And you need to mark your territory or attract mates or do all the other things that birds do to sing to do. And then 3, we want a line here. Birds sing more early in the morning. and we want to mark that with an E. There you go. I don't know what other explanations they are out there. Maybe they're just, chipper animals. Okay, from a newspaper's front page. Ooh, that's a hint that this is non-reasoning, because the front page isn't supposed to contain arguments, although a lot of times it does. All right. So the BP subsidiary in Alaska will pay a fine because it spilled oil on the north slope of Alaska. The penalty is the largest per barrel civil penalty ever assessed, exceeding the statutory maximum because the settlement involves claims other than the spill. The settlement also calls for BP Exploration Alaska to install a system-wide pipeline integrity program. So this is just a collection of events that are related, right? So we're just going to say that this is not an argument or explanation. It's just reporting facts. All right. A biologist is studying an animal. Alice has thick gray skin, a long trunk, and big tusks. She has 2 finger-like appendages formed from the lips at the end of her trunk and weighs about 5,000 pounds. I conclude that, look at that indicator phrase, Alice is probably an African and not an Asian elephant. So, here, do some cutting and pasting. So, indicator, I conclude that. And then this is the conclusion. Alice is probably an African and not an Asian elephant. And then all those other things are premises. I'm just going to cut and paste. And how many premises you break this up into is, it can be your own judgment. In fact, I could just say P1 and cut and paste the whole thing in here. That would be kind of tacky. So I'm just going to break it up at the sentence level. P1, P2. Oh, and we'll do the and here as a third one. P3, she weighs about 5,000 pounds. And therefore, she is an African and not an Asian elephant. All right. For the last 2 problems, we need to put them in standard form, separate deductive from inductive, and say whether they are valid or sound. A 9-year-old is working through her math homework. The 9-year-old that I drew this question on is now a 19-year-old. In any case, the problem says blank plus 7 equals 12. Now, if a number added to 7 equals 12, then subtracting that number from 12 should give me the number. And 12 minus 7 is 5, so the answer is 5. So this is deduction. Math is a deductive science. Deduction. Deductive. Math is deductive. Also, it is aiming at and aims at validity. So our conclusion, the answer is 5. We'll do it like that. And square is 5. P1. The question is blank plus 7 equals 12. P2, if a number plus 7 is 12, then 12 minus 7 should give you that number. I'll spell out minus there. Will give you that number. and then P3, 12 minus 7 is 5. Okay. Last question. Matterhorn is higher than Mount Whitney. Mount Whitney is higher than Mount Rainier. The obvious conclusion is that the Matterhorn is higher than Mount Rainier. So this is also deductive, and ultimately it's basically math. It's about the fact that being greater than, this mathematical relationship, is a transitive property. Oh, and I forgot to do the evaluation. The above argument is valid. That's how arithmetic works. So, deductive based on the transitivity of greater than, and then, so P1 P2 conclusion indicator valid, and if the premises are true, the conclusion has to be true. I don't even remember if the premises are true. I suppose I could Google it, but it doesn't actually matter. All right, so let's hit submit, and so I can show you how these things are graded. Boop. Yes, I'm ready to submit. So it says that I got a 30, but that is because it only graded 3 questions automatically. There are 7 questions that require grading. So sometimes people look at these and they say, oh no, I only got a 30. I'm going to fail the course. No, you didn't get a 30. You got all of the questions right that were automatically graded. And actually, even then, that grade might not be completely adequate, because I also go through and I check the automatically graded questions by hand, and I systematically give more partial credit than Canvas allows. I think Canvas's algorithm for giving partial credit is unfair. So you can go through and you can review your answers to the automatically graded questions. And if you want me to review your answers to the not automatically graded questions, you can email me. All right, so that's the practice test. The real test will be automatically generated the exact same way, with 3 vocab questions, 2 standard form questions, 3 identify argument, non-argument, or explanation questions, and then 2 deductive or inductive questions.